Today we'll only do about 4 poses, but we'll spend some time getting really into them. And this is how you advance your yoga practice. So I do like me a good vinyasa style flow where you're doing like 20 or 30 poses in a class. But it doesn't seem, I know so many students say, I've been going to yoga every day and I'm getting stronger, but I'm not actually progressing. My poses aren't deepening. I'm not getting more flexible and more strong in that particular pose. So a combination of both is really good. This is more like Iyengar style that we'll do today, where we really work on each pose. So having said that, let's get started in whatever centering posture you like. So child's pose maybe, or Virasana, or cross-legged seated, whatever works for you, taking a few moments to get all settled in. And while you're centering, just letting your body know kind of what's coming up next or what your practice will be all about. So internalizing, slowing down, maybe even deepening some postures. And there's something about just acknowledging what your practice will entail. It allows the body to prepare for it however it needs to. And while we're here, just taking a few slow, deep breaths through the nose. Getting our muscles some oxygen before we get going. And then slowly make your way all the way up to a comfortable seated position, taking all the time you need. And when you arrive, sitting up nice and tall, and we'll start with some circles of the head. So we'll loosen up the neck area. So let's lean over right ear to right shoulder, and then chin moves down. Left ear to left shoulder, and all the way around. So nice and slow. My neck does quite a few little snaps and pops and crackles, especially on the first couple. So at your own pace, we won't count. We'll just do like 3 or 4, something like that. Nice and slow. And then we'll switch directions. So nice and slow, other way. Nice big circles while we're sitting up nice and tall. And then we'll float the head to neutral. From here, heading into some arm circles. So we'll do both arms at the same time, multitasking. Arms go forward, up, even back a little bit, and down. And just at your own pace, nice and slow, trying to do nice big circles. And just keep going. Getting the shoulders warmed up, the neck area warmed up. Even the back a little bit. And I'm not counting here, just doing nice big circles at our own pace. Just a few moments longer. I'm trying to get to the point where I feel just a little bit of a warmth happening throughout the shoulders and the back. And I do this for my home practice too. I don't necessarily count when I'm doing my warm-up. I just go until things start to feel like I want them to feel. So this is a warm-up, so I'm going until they feel warm. And let's do last one wherever you're at. and relax. So from here, we'll work on Gomukhasana, cow face pose, but we'll separate the arms and the legs, and we'll even separate each arm too. So I'm gonna head towards the side here, and we'll raise our right arm, sending it up and then back. And when we send the arm back, we're trying to aim the fingertips down the back, and then we'll take the left arm and guide the elbow towards the back of the head. So I strategically placed a nice high ponytail for today, and there's a tendency for the hand to kind of go wonky, but I got these little spaghetti straps here in the middle of my back I'm trying to hold on to. You could use a strap, but we're using the one arm to help the other, so gently guiding, and then I can come back to face you maybe if I can only use my legs. And then when we're here, so eventually we want the elbow kind of behind the head and the fingertips running down the back. And then eventually, I don't think I'm yet quite there, but we will do this a little bit. So eventually we'll lift the chin up. So notice how that really intensifies the stretch. So I'm not quite able to lift my chin parallel to the earth just yet. But a few deep breaths, and I can already feel things are starting to loosen up. So we aren't here too long, just 1 minute-ish. Couple deep breaths. And then slowly, slowly release. So because of the nature of that pose, you can sort of feel the blood flowing back down to the fingertips. We tend to almost pinch off a couple areas here, and that's okay. This is one of the reasons why we don't want to hold it too long though. So we want the blood flow to return to the fingertips, and then other side. So left elbow up, and the fingers head back. So I just like to notice the angle. I can feel my elbow is heading that way. So my fingertips are heading that way. And what I want to do is guide the elbow really gentle, so that already feels like a stretch. I'm going nice and easy. And just guiding the elbow up and back behind the head. And if it's nowhere near, that's okay too. So the shoulders like to open up slowly. And that's okay. Some poses open up a little quicker than others. This one seems to be a little slower, and that is totally okay. So couple deep breaths here. If the body gives you a little more space, then feel free to adjust. I just felt my arm give a little more space, and I'm going to lift my chin up a little bit. Couple more deep breaths. And then slowly, slowly release. Take a second to let the blood flow return. I think my arms take longer than most people. There, now it feels like it's getting better. So now we'll do the bottom arm, and I like to use a yoga strap. So if you have one handy and you want to use one, I'll just turn backwards again to show you how I like to use this one. I like the type of strap that has a little handle, like you can make it into a loop. You could just do this by doubling up any strap or a belt. And then I'll use my right arm behind. So I'm holding onto the strap, and the length is downward. And then I'm going to use my left hand to guide this up and over the left shoulder. So I'm going kind of kitty corner. So I've got my right hand, and then it's going up towards the left shoulder, and then I'm scooching my right hand between the shoulder blades. So it takes a couple little scooches, and then most importantly, drawing, I wonder if I can turn all the way this way to show you how naturally my shoulder is slouching, and you can see my scapula winging. So from here, I'm trying to fix that. I'll draw the elbow and shoulder back, 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 back. And my shoulder blade doesn't want to go flat. That's okay. It is where it is. And we're just feeling a gentle stretch here. I actually quite like this stretch. Really gentle. Really, really gentle. And then a couple deep breaths. Usually the first few moments I'm in this one, I'm completely holding my breath because it's kind of intense, even when we're aiming for gentle, if you know what I mean. So if the body gives you some more space, go ahead and scooch it a little bit more into the posture. Mine hasn't. Mine's loosening up a little bit, but just, I'm good here. Eventually we want the hand to be completely between the shoulder blades and no higher. So we're not trying to get this hand up to the neck. We want the hand to be between the shoulder blades, and then it's when we put the two arms together, it's the job of the top arm to go back further, and the bottom arm stays where it is. I'll show you when we get there. Last deep breath here. And then slowly, slowly come on out, so nice and slow. And then we'll switch sides. So now we've got the left arm behind, right arm is lifting up and over the right shoulder. A little bit of a shimmy and a scooch, trying to get that left hand between the shoulder blades. And then we draw the elbow and the shoulder back. Couple deep breaths. So I feel this in my shoulder. I also feel this in my elbow. And I know from some other poses that my elbows are a little tight, which is so bizarre. Only in yoga do you find out, like, yeah, I have tight elbows. I've heard that from exactly 0 people ever in my life before. But we really do care about all of the joints. So it could be because I fell off my bike as a kid or something like that, you know, or just over time joints get tight. So this type of a pose brings all the joints back into alignment very, very gently. Last little bit here, so just a little bit longer, seeing if the body will give you a little more space. Mine hasn't, but that's okay. I do feel things are happening. Things are shifting. Things are moving. So I can feel the body's giving me a little more space, but not enough space to actually deepen the pose. Not just yet. If you have, that's absolutely fantastic though. Take it. Take that little millimeter wherever the body gives you. And then slowly, 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 we release. And again, I like to move like I'm 108, just really taking my time. Okay, so we did one arm at a time for Gomukhasana arms. Now we'll head into the legs, and then we'll add the arms again after. So for the legs, most people need to be up on a block. So for this class today, I'm assuming that you already know where your Gomukhasana is. So left knee goes behind right, and then I like to shimmy and scooch my knees together and then step the feet apart and sit back. So remember, if you don't have full flexibility of the hips, make sure you're sitting back slowly and maybe onto a folded blanket or a block. And then we just hang out here for a little bit. So while I'm here, I like to, this pose tends to give me a little more space fairly quickly. So as soon as I enter the posture, it's a fairly tight Gomukhasana for me. And then 30 seconds in, it loosens up a bit, and then I can kind of scooch in a little bit more. So starting to loosen up a bit. So what I like to do is shift a little bit so that I can scooch it a little bit tighter. And the only way to explain that is eventually we want one knee exactly on top of the other. And sometimes like the thighs get in the way, the calves, and they just get situated a little easier, a little better when it loosens up a bit. So I can feel my calf shifting just a little bit as my hips open up. So it's not the knees opening up, it's the hips. And specifically for this pose, I like to think about where the stretch is meant to happen. So it's so easy for the knees to take the brunt of this pose. So it's kind of automatic for me now. And that's the goal, is to get that into a motor skill. I'm doing a hip opener. Think hips. I want the hips to open. Feel the hips opening openness, space, and I'm really directing all of my attention into the hips, allowing the hips to open. The knees aren't torquing side to side. The legs are completely straight, even though they're bent and externally rotated. And then we'll slowly come on out and we'll flip sides, and then we'll put the arms together with the legs after. I'm actually going to do a downward dog between sides. You're welcome to do the same. I just feel like I need just a little bit of a little counter to that hip opener. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. And the mic drops. Literally, haha. So other side with the legs, right knee behind the left, and then that little shimmy and scooch. Step the feet apart, and then back. And right now it feels bleh for me. It'll take a second to settle in. I need to pull my pants up. Just how awkward it feels. Couple deep breaths. There we go. And really focusing the attention on the hips. So hips, 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 hips. I'm trying not to think about the knees at all. They're just there for show. Really opening, external rotation happening in the hips. Now I've got a little more space. I'm going to shimmy them really snug in there. So that one knee is right above the other. There we go. Couple deep breaths here. Thinking hips, 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 externally rotating. And then slowly, slowly come on out. I'm going to do a little downward dog after that. Oi. All right, now let's put everything together. So gently lowering through hands and knees. We'll do right side. So left crosses behind right, step the feet apart, and leaning back. And then I'll just sort of face backwards a little bit. Right arm goes up, sending it back. Left arm goes back, sending it up. And then finding those hands behind you. You could use a strap at this point still if we aren't able to find the hands. And then draw the elbows back. Elbows and shoulders back, both sides. Lifting up tall. And then slowly, slowly release. And other side. So we'll just flip, deflip. Could do a down dog between, but I'm just gonna go ahead and go right into it. Step the feet apart and heading back. And then left arm and right arm. This one, for most people who are right-handed, is a little bit tighter. So taking your time to get in. And then draw the elbows back, back, back. And then slowly, slowly come on out, slow, slow. All right, now we'll unravel the legs as well. Okay, so that was a good 15 minutes on one pose. Didn't feel like it. We could even do more. We could do more arm stretches and more leg stretches to get deeper, but that just gives you sort of an idea of how we can spend more time on one pose. So let's head on to the next one, and we'll work on Marichyasana C, which is a spinal twist, seated. But first, we'll do Sphinx or seal pose. So we're going to do a back bend to help us prepare for a twist. So seal is a yin posture that's basically cobra. And Sphinx is Sphinx in both yin and hatha. So Sphinx is propping up onto the forearms. And if this is enough of a stretch, we stay here. So this is an either or situation. And if you think that's not really much of a stretch, then you can start to straighten the arms from here. Or if you need more of a stretch, you can bring the arms in more, so hands are closer to the ribs. Wherever you're at, we hold for 2 minutes. So we want to feel a very gentle stretch and or compression of the spine. So this is a multitasker in that we are stretching the longitudinal ligament, like the ligament that runs completely up and down the length of the spine on the front side. And we're compressing the bones of the spine to increase bone density. So if you compress bone against bone repeatedly, quickly, that will deteriorate the structure of the bone. If you gently press and hold, the bone learns that, okay, we need to become more dense. I just find that fascinating. The body's like, all right, bring it. So knowing how to strengthen the body is just as important as the time you're putting into doing it. And keep going. My nose is itchy right now. Does anyone else have that happen in the middle of yoga? You're like, am I the only person that has this weird thing happening right now and I can't move? While we're here, we're trying to find a nice even curve throughout the spine. So the heart lifts up, whether you're in Sphinx or Seal. A little nose scratch there. I couldn't help it. Eventually, if you're super yogic, you just ignore everything. You ignore it because you're so yogic. One day. Little bit longer, if available. So always know you can release a little bit out of the pose or completely out of the pose whenever needed. And then when we come out of this pose, try to come out slowly and use the back body strength. So use the muscles. So slowly release the weight into the hands and try to keep the back bending with the strength of the back. And then slowly release. And then we'll head up and back to child's pose just for a few moments. So up and back. I like to take my time, nice and slow, just as the body allows. And then come on up. And instead of heading into Marichyasana C, we'll head into a prep position. So we'll head into Anjaneyasana, low lunge pose. I like to have a blanket for this one beneath my back knee. Oh, this one is 2 blankets doubled up. That's probably too much. That's okay, actually. So beneath the back knee, right foot forward into low lunge. But from here, heading into low lunge with a twist. So left elbow crosses over the right knee. And then bringing the hands to prayer. And then eventually the palms are near the sternum. So that's what we're aiming for. Eventually, mine are not there, nor do they ever have to be. It's just for trajectory purposes, knowing where you're going. And then slowly, come on out and we'll switch sides. So just through hands and knees is good. Right leg back, left leg forward. Again, I like to move like I'm 108, taking my time. And then when you're ready, right arm crosses over left. Palms together, and then opening up the heart to the sky. then slowly, slowly release all the way out. And then the next pose is twisted roots, still preparing for Marichyasana C, which is a seated twist. So we'll lay all the way back. Get rid of my blankets here and lay all the way onto our backs. And then arms go into a T position, palms facing down. So we're completely square, knees are bent, feet on the floor. We'll do a little lift and scooch of the hips to the right so that my left hip is in line with the central axis of my body. Right leg goes all the way over left. And then knees go to the left. And my head looks to the right for a nice full spinal twist. And we're here. Again, you could work on just one pose for the entire class. And sometimes I do that. If I have one pose I'm working on, I'll do all sorts of prep stretches and positions. And then it's quite extraordinary how deeply we can get into that position when we really work and focus on just one. But for today, we're doing just a little taste of that. So sometimes we can hold this pose here for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. We'll just do like one-ish, maybe a little bit more than one. And then scoop the belly in, and press the low back into the floor, unraveling, unwinding, and between sides, hug the knees in just to make sure we're completely square. Maybe a little rock side to side, and it squares everything up. And then other side, so arms are in a T position, palms facing down, a little lift and scooch of the hips over to the left. So hips go left, knees go right. And we look over to the left. And to come out, we'll scoop the belly in, press the low back into the floor. Oh, the back's starting to feel loosey-goosey now. This is good. Hug the knees in, gently rock side to side. The first twist we did, my back felt like a 2x4. It was like, no. Now things are loosening up. All right, let's come on up. So you can come up quickly or gently roll over to the right, pausing, and then pressing yourself up, taking your time. And then, let's see, I think we're ready to head into Marichyasana C. I like props for this one. We'll go for the full posture today. I like a block. If your arms are quite long, this block will not help you. But I like to place the block right behind me. And I'm having microphone issues. Hang on. I am not very graceful. Here we go. So for Marichyasana C, we start in Dandasana, staff pose. So make sure we're all nice and square, lifting up tall. And then we'll bend the right knee, draw the foot in as close to the hip as it'll go. And I've heard some people say that one hand's width between the foot and the opposite thigh is good. I actually find you got to find your own sweet spot. When I teach this one, I usually say one hand's width because I think as a general rule that tends to work. I don't know, I think my thighs are maybe a little bit wider and my feet are too, and it works just better to have them side by each. So let's draw that in. This is a spinal twist. So you can hug the knee in and twist to the right. I like to have my hand on a block because there's a tendency to lean back in this pose and we don't want to at all. If anything, leaning forward to get the bind, because eventually we can bind this. We can try today. I haven't bound a pose in a while, so we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Let's do this together. So if available, cross the elbow right over. And then I like to really use my block to even bend my elbow and lift my body up nice and tall. To bind, we want to have the thumb turned down. It wraps around. And then we find the hands behind. I'm not able to bind right now. So we take our time. This is the bonus and the benefit of practicing a pose for a while. So I'm just going to twist a little bit more. Working on the internal rotation of the arm. And then slowly coming out. Whew, I got that bind, but boy, it was tight. This is why it's good to throw all the postures into the mix and work on them. It does happen. I've been working a lot on strength lately, and so flexibility does tend to wane a little bit, and that's okay, right? Then we can bring it back by working on it again. Other side. So bending the left knee in, and then just trying to find that sweet spot for you. So for me, it's a little bit more in, crossing the arm over, lifting up tall. And I like to work on the twist a little bit first. Maybe finding the bind. One of the tricks too, if you're not currently in, you can notice my knee is not straight up to my chest. So I'm still recovering from a bit of a hip injury. And so I don't have that ability. So then my arm doesn't have the ability to bind. So that's one of the tricks, is get that knee up as close as it'll go, provided it doesn't hurt, which mine is pinching a little, so I'm going to leave it. I'll be nice to my body. Even though I want to go for it, but I'm not going to. And then nice and slow. Come on all the way out. So there we go. It was 15 minutes of working on Marichyasana C. And again, there was so many more exercises and stretches and poses we could have done to increase the range of motion with the hip, moving this way, some internal rotation of Marichyasana C. Maybe one day we'll do an entire hour on just one pose, because it's kind of fascinating to do that too. So next up, we'll work on upward facing bow. So that's sometimes known as full wheel erroneously, and I also often call it full wheel, but it's not full wheel. It is upward bow. And for that one, if you're like, that's not in my yoga practice, Carla, no worries, do bridge pose instead. So what we do is we lay all the way back. And for this one, all of the previous poses have helped to open up things. So we've opened up the shoulders, and we did Sphinx or Seal to open up through the back. We also did some twisting, which is really good to prepare for back bending. So we are pretty good to go. The only thing we didn't work on too much was the hip flexors. And so that's okay, if that's for another day, but trying to think of lifting the hips straight up. So try to think of upward bow as your hip flexor stretch for the day. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's okay. Laying back, bending the knees, feet on the floor, and then planting the hands beneath the shoulders. And just knowing that you've got quite a bit of mobility in your back now and in your shoulders from our previous exercises. Let's take a deep inhale on the floor. Exhale on the floor. If you're going for bridge today, go ahead and lift the hips. And if you're going for upward bow, raising up to the top of the head, pausing there. And then right from here, I'm thinking hips. So hips are forward, hips are forward, hips are up. And then on an inhale, straightening the arms. And hold. I like to try to straighten through the legs a little bit to try and get those hip flexors stretching and get the shoulders above the wrists. And then when you're ready, lowering down to the top of the head, pausing. And then all the way down. And hug the knees in. Upward bow feels so much better after all of that prep work. Couple little rocks side to side. And then the next pose, so this pose that we just did, we aren't working on as much or as long. And the next pose, we won't work on as much or as long, but we'll hold it for a little while. And that's Halasana, plow pose. So if you're ready and if you know and love this pose, you can go ahead and head into it. I need to have some blankets beneath me for plow. You can have blankets beneath you to lessen the angle of plow pose to make it easier. Place the blankets beneath the shoulders, but not beneath the head. And that'll make it easier to access. I like to have the blankets beneath my whole body so that it doesn't hurt the spine so much. So my spine tends to feel a little tender if I don't have, you want them flat too, because you don't want to be on a raised surface that's bumpy. So when you're ready, heading all the way back, and then the toes go up and over. Or if that's not in your practice, we simply lift the feet up and hang out here for a bit. And if you wanted to do that against a wall, even better. If you're heading into Halasana, then it's a little bit of momentum. So I always like to stress a little bit. Not too much momentum. Catch the hips, and if you miss on the first go, release, try again. Okay, here we go. Up and over. And then we hold. So for the arms, you can support the back or straighten them out or reach them up overhead, whatever feels better. I love to do this pose organically, so just letting it evolve as it wants to. When you need to come out, scoop the belly in and do so as slow as available, otherwise hold here. This one is nice to hang out in for like 3 minutes, even more. So we'll try that today. It might be the case that you can hang out for about a minute or maybe 2, and then you need to come out for a minute or 2 and then come back in again. So taking care of your body, doing what's right for you. I also like to oscillate between Halasana and Karnapidasana. Karnapidasana is when you bend the knees. I'm not really going in fully, but you can bend the knees and bring them alongside your ears. Try not to move too much when you're in this pose. And we're still here as long as you're okay. And again, this one is lengthening ligaments. So similar to seal pose, or that elongated cobra pose that we did, or sphinx. A gentle stretch is what we're looking for. Super gentle. Okay, to come out, I like to come out like 4 or 5 millimeters and then hold. Maybe 4 or 5 more and then hold. And then I like to use my arms as landing gear. So my arms are straight away from the body on my yoga mat. And then belly scoops in and slowly, one vertebra at a time. Slow, 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 slow. And then we end with the feet on the floor, the knees are bent. And just hang out here in a neutral position for a bit. Maybe even start to roll the head from side to side to release the pose. And then we can head right into Shavasana from here. So if your back wants a little extra support today, which is very possible after a nice big stretch like Halasana, then keep the knees bent with the feet on the floor and allow the knees to tip in towards each other. Otherwise, extend the legs straight and arms along your sides, palms facing up, and close the eyes. Relaxing everything, but especially through the neck and the shoulders and all the way down the arms, letting the fingers softly curl. And softening the entire length of the spine. We spent a lot of time opening up through the spine, twisting, flexing, extending. See if you can slowly, one vertebra at a time, find softness. Right from the top of the neck, and scanning a little bit down the next vertebra, a little bit down until you reach the sternum area. Softening each vertebra, carrying on through the mid-back, and all the way down to the low back, all the way to the tailbone. And even softening through the hips. And softening through the face. Softening around the eyes. And even the muscle between the eyes. Just letting it all go. And starting to come back. Wiggle the fingers and the toes. And gently roll your head from side to side. And reaching your arms above head on the floor for a big stretch. Feeling totally refreshed. And then bending your knees in and gently roll over to the right side, pausing for just a moment as we come back. And then slowly start to press yourself all the way up to a comfortable seated position, taking all the time you need. And when you arrive, palms facing up on the knees, inhale, sitting up tall, and exhale, softly close the eyes. And taking a moment to just focus on the spine for our last bit of class here. I can feel my spine vibrating a little bit. So the class we did today has stimulated the nervous system. And so you might find that you've got excess energy for the next few days, and then you'll learn it's not excess, it's wonderful, and it's energy we didn't know we were missing. Just taking a moment to see if you can feel that. If not, just feel the looseness of the spine. And slowly open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a really good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.